Unpacking that, like, what does that mean? And I'm basically
All right. If everybody would like to take a seat, we will get started. I'm happy to interrupt all of your very interesting conversations. But as everyone's getting their seat, I have a few announcements. As of this second, I just posted a poll in the Ratio Christi announcement. We are going to be at Celebration of Minds this Thursday. So if you would like to join us, please do. Also, welcome to Ratio Christi. If you don't know what this is a Christian apologetics organization on campus. We bring in speakers to talk about apologetic topics. This week we have 3 student speakers that are going to give you some very interesting presentations. But more on that whenever they're presenting. 2 more announcements. One, Donald, right here, has this cool piece of paper that if you would like to be on our email list and know what every week we're talking about, who's going to be talking about it, and if you want to show up, you will just get to know all that information if you sign up for our email list. So please, if sometime after the presentation you would like to add your email to our list, we will not spam you, I swear.
But we will sell your information.
Yes, we will sell it like $5 a person, so you know, gotta fund it somehow. But last announcement before I pray us in. That's something. Last announcement before I pray us in. We are going to be having a retreat this semester. The fall break for Minds, which is October 20th and 21st. We're going to be having a short little retreat. We're going to go up someplace, we're not exactly sure, but we know it's going to be very close, so you won't have to travel anywhere.
We know where it is.
Or we know where it is.
But more details to follow.
It's
close. It's close.
We're figuring it out. But please feel free to ask any of the leadership, myself, Carl, Donald, Grayson over here. Feel free to ask any of us if you are interested. Yes.
Devin, what's your name?
My name is Devin Fisher. That is a good point. I am Devin Fisher, the president of Ratio Christi. I'm not just some random dude who walked up here started talking. But thank you for joining us. And with that, unless I'm forgetting any more announcements, I will pray us in. Lord, I just thank you for today and the wonderful day that you gave us. I thank you for the rain that you gave us that interrupted our whiteboarding, but I thank you for it nonetheless. I appreciate all the people that came here today. I just pray that they would be able to learn something from our 3 student speakers, and that you would also bless us in this room and bless us as we talk and discuss, and that we would have good discussions and good questions. And I just hope that everyone would learn something today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Yeah.
Without further ado, Chase.
Are we recording?
Yes.
Yeah. So my name is Chase. I'm a sophomore here at Minds. I'm studying computer science. And I'm here to talk about moral relativism. Now I was really excited whenever I was asked to do this presentation because I realized the leadership here has no idea what I'm going to talk about for 20 minutes. So I figured we'll derail everything from the get-go and get into story time with Sisyphus. So before I get started with that, is anyone familiar with the story of Sisyphus in here? Like half of us, maybe. Does anyone, what was that?
I know it's punishment.
Okay. Does anyone want to briefly tell the story of it?
He basically cheated death a few times, and because it's like a useless endeavor, they're like, for your punishment for doing this pointless task, you'll have to do a pointless task forever.
Yep. So yeah, exactly. The Greeks love their plays. So play starts the curtains slide and enter stage left a king, Sisyphus. He really defied the gods just over and over repeatedly. and Zeus got pretty angry, so he punished him with repeated eternal suffering, right? This is part of the story that a lot of us know about. He had to carry a boulder up a hill, but he would slip and roll back down to the start at the very end. It was meant to be a kind of eternal torture, and his task was really designed to be futile and hopeless, and ultimately symbolic of the human condition. Really, I think about school. You go to school, and then you go to home, and you do homework, and then you go to sleep, and then you go to school, and then you go home, and then homework. Or if you're working your 9-to-5 job, you wake up, you go to your job, you go home, you sleep, job, home, sleep. It's just over and over. So with that in mind, how do we think Sisyphus maybe felt? What was his mental state looking like? Just in a word. Not good. Thumbs down. Does anyone disagree with that? No? Okay, so we're all relatively sane in here, hopefully. Although there are some people that would disagree with that. There's this one French philosopher, Camus. No idea why his name is pronounced that way. But
French.
yeah, well, there you go. But, still, it's fun to say. He saw this, and he really saw how Sisyphus had control over his destiny. He could determine what brought meaning, what brought him purpose, and he could decide what he did and how he did it. And so, in one essay he wrote on the topic, he famously concluded that one must imagine Sisyphus happy. He came from a view that there was no God. He was an atheist, and he specifically believed that value and meaning come from determining our own purpose and how we live our lives. So that really looks like everything from the work we do to our morality, how we treat others. And he believed that our lives are short, so we need to individually kind of determine how to spend it. We see this kind of all over pop culture. Last night I was watching Guardians of the Galaxy, and it occurred to me, it's kind of strange that we're rooting for these people who are like murderers and thieves and just these crazy criminals, right? Like the worst in the galaxy in this case. But we see them as heroes because they have this kind of internal compass that they stick to, and also save the universe. But they stick to a very strong moral code. I think that this view is very popular in America. I have some Barna statistics from 2018 with some different demographics. Here I have 5 questions that kind of have changed over time, a lot of political stuff. At the top here in this blue, we have Gen Z. And this is a chart of what each generation strongly agrees with. So you have like strong agree, disagree, etc. What I thought was super interesting was the lying is morally wrong. Only a third of people in Gen Z strongly believe that that is true. And we kind of see how it slips over time. We see this very clear trend. We see similar trends with other issues like abortion, what marriage should look like, what sex looks like, and homosexuality. We actually see that 80% of Gen Z would disagree with this, at least in some capacity. I think we even see kind of an extension of that in these next couple graphs. Again, we have Gen Z at the top. And 24% of people strongly believe that what's right and wrong changes over time. So morality is no longer something that's just, this is what's right and wrong. It's something that changes over time. It's liquid. We actually see here 21% believe that it's dependent on culture. On individuals. And so we see how it's very relative, throughout modern society. Here I have kind of an opposite graph. This is a graph of strongly disagree. And we have it put against engaged Christians, churched Christians, unchurched Christians, and then no faith and other faith. We'll see that engaged Christians believe, at 30% at least, believe that it is okay to challenge another person's beliefs. We note that 7 to 10% of other Christians and other faiths don't think this is true. And this is because if we are really determining our own beliefs, then why should I tell you what's okay and what's not okay? I believe that engaged Christians we kind of see a spike there because morality is based on something higher. It doesn't matter what I think or what Bob thinks or what Bob across the street thinks. It is what it is. We also see that emotions seem to have a big part in this. If your beliefs offend someone or hurt their feelings, it is probably wrong. 65% of engaged Christians disagree strongly with that, but we'll notice that everyone else is kind of in the 30% range. So a vast majority of them would say that, yeah, if your beliefs hurt someone else's feelings or hurt someone, then there's probably a problem. So this view is prevalent, is the point I'm trying to make, and I kind of want to formalize it really quick. There's kind of two different flavors that we can see here. And so I'm going to start with a flavor that isn't even on here, descriptive moral relativism. Descriptive cultural relativism. It's the idea that different cultures have different values. Now this isn't really debated, hopefully. Different cultures definitely have different values. But some people take that a step further. They say that ideas on moral topics are actually bound to the cultures they're in. So each culture has different values because they're all right in that specific culture. And that's where we get this normative cultural relativism from. We have this second flavor, though, that says, okay, it's not based on culture, it's really based on individual. And that is moral subjectism. So, with this more formal kind of definition, we do see two big problems with this view. First of all, it's internally inconsistent. So, I have a quick survey. 1 + 1 = 2. Would we agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like so.
What about 1 + 1 = 3?
Sometimes.
Exactly. So two ideas can't be simultaneously correct. One's right, one's wrong. And so cultures that are disagreeing, clashing with ideas, they can't both be right. It can't just be bound. Like they're making truth claims that are exclusive of each other. This is, in many cases, enough for philosophers to dismiss moral relativism entirely. I think about even some of this Camus's guys, his colleagues, would dismiss this view. And on top of all that, we also see that it's kind of unlivable, just to be fully honest, because we undermine moral progress. So the big issue is that we can't say this thing that another culture did or something that a group did at a certain time is good or bad. Now, does anyone have any examples of how that could not work out well? Nazis? Yep. So you're saying that genocide isn't good, is what you're saying.
I mean, I think not, but you know.
Okay, well there you go. Under this moral relativistic worldview, we wouldn't be able to say that. I saw your hand.
The Canaanites.
Canaanites, another great example. Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot to add. I saw your hand.
I was going to say 1940s Germany as well.
Yep, exactly. I mean, there's tons of examples. There's slavery in America, slavery in other parts of the world, and just really treating others unnecessarily harshly. So, the goal of this presentation is really to give us the tools to respond. So we have these ideas that it doesn't make sense logically, and it's not really livable. We can't, we can't handle this. So, how do we talk to someone about that? How do we have a solid conversation with them about apologetics in general for our faith? I think that potentially the most important thing to keep in mind is that we need to approach this all with love and respect. So whenever we're talking to people, we're really ambassadors for Christ. And if we're able to show the fruits of the Spirit while we're talking to them and hopefully answering their questions, it gives us a lot of authority, I guess, whenever we're speaking. The number one cause of hate towards Christianity or Christians is really seeing hypocrisy. I think it's like 65% of people who are against Christianity cite that as one of their reasons. Do not quote me on that. We really want to make sure that we are representing Christ well. And I want to give a couple of practical examples of what that looks like. One thing I like to do is try to ask a lot of questions. it's not about winning an argument. It's about trying to get at their heart, trying to figure out what's wrong, or really what is causing them to avoid Christianity. I find that I'm able to have a lot of success whenever I'm gentle but still firm. We don't want to compromise on our rock, our salvation, but we can also be gentle while doing it. We don't have to be overly harsh, yelling at them, nothing like that. I really want to emphasize that apologetics is about putting a rock in someone's shoe. That's an analogy we use here sometimes. I think whenever you have a little like pebble in your shoe, like you don't just forget about that. Like it annoys you for as long as it's in there, and eventually you have to deal with it. Our goal is to say, hey, maybe there is something wrong with this relativistic view, or maybe this doesn't work. So what if you looked into this alternative? What if you looked into this absolute moral law or something? Let's say we need that. Now maybe you need a moral lawgiver, and maybe Jesus, being a moral lawgiver, is someone to look into. We really want to lead them down that path. Moral relativism ultimately denies absolute truth. So I have one verse or two verses to share about that. John 18:37. Therefore Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say correctly that I'm a king. For this reason I've been born, and for this I have come into the world." This is the important part. To testify the truth. Not a truth, but the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. And here's, I think, one of the most powerful questions in Scripture. Verse 38, Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" People with this kind of view are asking themselves, the world, everyone, that same question. What is truth? What should I believe? How do I treat others? And we have the answers. We have the way, the truth, and the life. So I want to conclude here by going back to story time. I don't believe that Sisyphus could have been happy. I think that to deny this reality is to deny the power of, frankly, eternal torture, and to ignore the pain and the hardship that we experience in this life. Our hearts desire something more than walking through this life of pain, and really the reality of eternal suffering or eternal paradise after this life. And so I truly believe that we desire the gospel at a fundamental level. What we all need is the good news that there's someone who can do abundantly more than what we could ever ask, dream, or imagine. And that someone already has, someone has made a bridge for us to really step into our calling and enjoy that eternal paradise with the way, the truth, and life. So yeah, that's all she wrote. Do you guys have any questions?
What do you mean, like, two ideas can exist at the same time? Can you give a real world example of that?
One story I almost decided to open with this is I do not remember how to pronounce her name. Antagony, I think. But there was this young lady, again, Greek mythology. She was mourning over her brother who had just died. And there were two laws that she needed to follow. There were the law of the gods and the law of people. The gods said, you need to bury this man for his honor. Like this, it's not optional. The king at the time said, nuh-uh, you better not bury this guy. She had to break the law no matter what. And you're coming at it with two contradictory things. And you're really, I think this story is kind of hitting really that intersection. So that, I guess that is a myth.
Moral evil versus lawful.
Right, well, even just, I think multiple laws is an easy way to think about it, but also like, I don't know, yeah. If you have the law of the land and you're conscious, how do you work with that? Does that answer your question?
Sort of continuing on that point, kind of just to play devil's advocate, I mean, I would say that moral relativists aren't claiming objective truths about reality, that they're okay with just saying subjective, and it's not necessarily like a contradiction for me to say that like chocolate is the best ice cream and then someone else to say vanilla is the best ice cream. Those are just opinions. we can have two contradictory opinions, that's fine.
Yes.
Those are not objective truths. And that's kind of, I think, how the moralist relative would respond is just, they're not going to hold to moral realism, the concept of morals being objective truths, but rather than just subjective things, either we as individuals or society holds to. It's not contradictory for society to have different opinions.
Right.
Although, of course, the strongest argument against that is that people don't act like that. People don't act like it's just like a preference that they believe that the Nazis, for instance, did wrong.
Mhm.
It's not just like, I just don't like this flavor of ice cream, just like I don't like the Nazis and what they did.
Mhm.
It's more just like they see it as something objective that they did wrong, not just like, oh, they just had this different taste or something.
That's a great point that you make. You don't have to hold to any kind of subjective realism, I think is what
No,
you
it's
said.
moral realism is
Moral realism, sorry.
what moral relativists will deny
Right.
is that morality is like this objective thing.
Mhm.
They would say it's more subjective.
I think really with all these views, we're denying an absolute universal truth that's consistent across all time and all space. We're saying that's not true. That's not there.
It's hard to live though, of course.
Exactly. I would argue again it's impossible. I saw your hand first.
Kind of as a response to that, though, I think it depends on how deep you want to take the argument. Because if you're just saying like based on taste, then maybe I can get behind that claim. But if you like dove deeper, like what if we find out in 50 years that chocolate's actually not very good for you, and maybe vanilla has some type of like health boosting benefits? Not saying that that's true, but if that was true, then there would start to be a little bit of truth to the claim that maybe vanilla is better than chocolate. So I think it's about how deep you go onto the issue, not necessarily like, I mean, I can see the case you're making, like the devil's advocate case for moral relativism, but I think if you go deeper and deeper and deeper into any subject, there's a right and wrong, there's a truth and a falsity, there's reality and a fake.
Mhm.
I don't know. There's always like right and wrong. There's positive and negative. I think that's just everything if you zoom in enough in a sense.
I kind of get what you're saying, but I kind of disagree. Like things like taste, for instance, are indeed subjective. Some people just like certain things because of the taste. Sometimes some people just don't like it, and so it's very possible for someone to say like this tastes the best, and this like chocolate tastes the best, versus someone saying vanilla tastes the best. And those are just subjective opinions that like are both true for those people.
But we also have fallen taste buds.
You're claiming that there is an objective ice cream flavor?
There probably is. I would say it's whatever Jesus says. I mean,
This also brings up the fallacy though of like a lot of people who believe that like there are people who think that there is objective morality, but then it's based on like whatever facts of the universe. Like as you said, if you zoom in enough, you'll figure it out. But that runs into the issue of, well, who determines that if something's beneficial to your health, it's objectively good? You have to have some sort of standard that would say that that's objectively a good thing. And so it still comes back to you're missing a key element, which is that there has to be a conscious being determining and giving values to these different things. Because all else held equal, like something being healthy for you doesn't necessarily have a moral good to it unless you assign it that.
I also wanted to say that with the whole thing about opinions, if person A prefers chocolate and person B prefers vanilla, it is an objective truth that person A prefers chocolate.
I think I saw your hand. Just have a question.
No, it was more of a add-on. So I think that he's trying to make an objective statement that it's relative, subjective, which kind of is like what providing a problem to him. He's saying what morality is subjective because it's all preferences. But is that statement not a preference, which could make it, neither true or false?
I'm kind of getting at the idea that the claim he made was a truth claim. That was objective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can look out for as well. But I think we might be out of time.
Yes, I hate to interrupt more conversation, but we do have two more presenters. I'm sure our wonderful presenters would be happy to talk with any of you after the fact, but unfortunately, we're going to have Grayson take the stage now.
Alrighty. Howdy, y'all. I'm Grayson Hancock, the sunburned secretary for Ratio Christi. I will be talking about pluralism. Now, you're probably wondering why there's an elephant. We'll get to that. But first, what is pluralism? Now, there's two main types. You have social pluralism, which is very common, really actually a pretty good thing. It's what promotes the freedom of religious expression as an inherent right for all people. And it advocates for toleration of religious views. We have it in our Bill of Rights, like freedom to practice religion. And no matter what someone believes, you're to treat them as a human being, And a note on that toleration is it actually implies a form of disagreement. Toleration has been a word that's kind of had a bunch of definitions recently, but if you don't tolerate something, that either means you're, being aggressively against it, or you're actually in agreement with it. Because, if you agree with it, you don't need to tolerate it. You agree with it. So toleration actually implies a form of disagreement. And you probably see social pluralism summed up in the phrase, agree to disagree. So you're not holding that these other people's beliefs are necessarily true, just that, they have a right to hold them. And you can live with that. This presentation will be focusing on philosophical pluralism. Now, this is different in the sense that it claims all religious truth claims are actually simultaneously true, like all of them are true. And all religions are equally valid paths to God. Now, you've probably heard philosophical pluralism demonstrated in a sense like everyone prays to the same God. In fact, this past summer, Ratio Christi, we read a book called Without a Doubt by Kenneth Richard Samples. And there was a chapter on pluralism, and it opened up with this account of after the September 11th attacks, George Bush ordered a National Day of Prayer, in which a lot of different faiths got together and, prayed. And on that day, Oprah Winfrey said in front of millions of people this exact quote, everyone prays to the same God, a very bold claim out for everyone to hear. And you've also probably heard there are many roads to the top of the mountain, implying like, no matter which path you choose, you'll get to the same place. And I think it's good to divide social and philosophical pluralism because one can hold social pluralism without holding philosophical pluralism. But there's actually a lot of overlap between that. People who hold to social pluralism might incidentally hold to philosophical pluralism, thinking they're the same thing. So I just really wanted to make that distinction. Now, the rise of pluralistic thinking has a lot to do with postmodern relativism. See Chase's presentation. And that's because it's all your truth, my truth. Oh, you believe this, I believe this. It's probably kind of the same thing anyway, It's very culturally acceptable, which again, that's the social pluralism, because that's very much culturally acceptable and indeed is an all right thing. And it's also very personally reassuring. And it's a real reassurance that people have. Like if you believe that all religious paths lead to God, you can kind of just relax and not really change anything. There's no motivation to really seek out anything. And that's a real comfort for some people. And I don't want to discount that, but I do want to argue against it. Now there's also an influence of globalism where here, like in the US, for example, we've become aware of these Eastern thoughts of like Hinduism and Buddhism, stuff like, karma, reincarnation, and all that. But it's also a very westernized view of that, and there's a great lack of information about the actual depth and difference of these different worldviews. And there's a general just misunderstanding of exactly what those beliefs would hold and how vastly different they are. Now, the first issue I wanted to point out is that of it being a logical contradiction. Now, the law of non-contradiction says that it's impossible for A to equal not A at the same time and in the same way. Now, I have an example of that. The screen is behind me. That's true. And now the screen is in front of me. Screen's in front of me, screen's behind me. Different time. So they can both be true, but not at the same time. Now we have the screen is in front of me and behind me. We have a screen in front of me and a screen behind me. That's both true. They're just different screens, not in the same way, but at the same time, it's true. Now, I want you to take a minute to look at this chart. This chart has a bunch of it's the top 5 religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And it's a comparison chart where across the top, you can see just there are different ideas about some important concepts. Stuff about God, the afterlife, and each religion's thought on Jesus. Now, as you look at this, I just want y'all to kind of point out, what do you observe that's like similar or different between them? Feel free to just say whenever you find something.
They all have a version of heaven.
Yes, they all have an idea of some kind of eternal destiny after death. That would be a comparison. However, that difference is vastly different across them as well.
They're all philosophically intolerant.
Yes, indeed. The thing that's the absolute same across all of them is that there is no other way. And that is shared among every single one of these religions. There is some variation between Hinduism and Buddhism. There's some wide variety. Some might say that there is some other way, but there are branches that definitely hold that no, it's exclusive. And I wanted to bring this up because, like the law of non-contradiction says, you can't have something that's A and not A at the same time and in the same way. And when you compare these religions, you'll see that you can't hold 2 of these at once. Like, let's just look at Jesus between Judaism and Christianity. You can't have Jesus be resurrected and not resurrected. That doesn't work. So you can't be a Orthodox Jew and a Christian at the same time, just because of that principle of non-contradiction. Now, there is a thought experiment that could potentially shatter this argument. I'm sorry, I had to do that. Which is the elephant analogy. Now, the way this thought experiment goes is that there are these blind men who encounter an elephant for the first time. And one of them might feel the side of the elephant and say, it's a wall. One might feel the tail of the elephant and say, no, it's a brush. The other might feel the tusk and say, it's a spear. Or the trunk and say, it's a snake. Or the leg and say, it's a tree. Now, the analogy goes that these blind men are all like the different religions, all kind of feeling the same God or divine something, and all coming to these different conclusions from what they feel and find, but really it's just the same thing. Now, my question to you is, what do you think? Is it just an analogy that, fails, or does it work? Is there some truth to it?
When I first heard this analogy, I misunderstood it and I liked it. I liked my misunderstanding. I thought the point was that you should not be, arrogantly certain of what you believe and sure that everyone around you who disagrees with you is a complete moron. Basically, believe what you believe, but, try to be open-minded. I thought that was the point.
Indeed, there is a truth to that too. Do be open-minded, just don't be so open-minded that your brains fall out,
Also, I just realized that these blind guys did not investigate that elephant very thoroughly at all.
No, they did not.
Yes. I think, just to add on to her comment, it's very, ironic because when you just disagree with people that much, think that and just say that your belief is the only one that that's a sign of being a kind of a dimwit, like not being open to new ideas, not trying to see the perspective from other people's point of view. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Closed-mindedness is very good at.
Yeah, definitely. And the best way to actually argue against someone else's position is to first understand it fully yourself. And then after you do that, then you can, see if there's some truth to it, or you can better investigate the holes in it. But does anyone else have anything?
Just kind of what you were saying about you have to investigate everyone's belief. I think the biggest thing wrong with pluralism is it's saying everyone has a path to God, and everyone's beliefs equally valid, but at the same time their beliefs about the only way to heaven and the contradictions. For pluralism to be true, every religion has to be wrong about that. So in that way, pluralism is the only way.
Exactly. That's exactly it. But I saw your hand on it. The biggest thing that always gets me about this analogy is that they're all wrong. Not a single one of the blind men got it right. That's also correct.
And going off of that, like what you think about determines how you would act and such. And so obviously, simply only the person who can see would act correctly according to the knowledge. Or else they'll probably try to, I don't know, person who thinks it's like a brush or something might try to brush his hair with it or something.
Yeah.
And probably not know how to do it correctly.
Yeah.
Because like what you know obviously has impact on what you do.
Yeah, that's true. It will definitely change how you act around it. But what y'all both touched on is exactly the issue with the elephant analogy, which is that it's exclusive. Like, how can one actually know God to be unknowable? That's what the pluralist claims when they make the elephant analogy. They're saying that you can't actually know God at all. All these people are just feeling this different part, but the truth is, God is actually unknowable. So that's the claim that they're making. And how did they come to know that? So they really are just claiming that they are the only ones that actually have true knowledge of God. And in other words, by attempting to reconcile all these religions together, the pluralist says that God is unknowable. However, this is to make an exclusive truth claim, like you said. And essentially creates one's own personalized religion, like Grayson here. Which this photo I got from, I don't know how many of y'all know about Dr. Gavin Ortlund. He's a Protestant theologian, philosopher. This is from his 5-minute case for Christianity. He touches on pluralism a little bit. I thought that this was just a fun little image where he pretty much made the same argument that the pluralists, by making their own exclusive truth claim of God is unknowable, they have to discard things from certain religions that disagree with that claim. And they just pick and choose whatever they want until they create their own personalized religion and worldview. And that's actually how you can hear the people who say that they're spiritual but not religious. They're likely a pluralist, just grabbing these ideas that they like and kind of creating their own personalized religion, like Relativism. And furthermore, Christianity claims direct revelation from God. Getting this problem with the pluralist claim that God is unknowable. Well, claim that God actually spoke directly to humans. And here's this verse from Deuteronomy: "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things that are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law." It's Deuteronomy 29:29. And these other verses also have to do with God revealing directly information to human beings. Now, Jesus also makes some incredibly exclusive truth claims like, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me," John 14:6. So, pluralist has to completely ignore these, but also accept them because they're a pluralist. It doesn't work. You can't do that. Now, how should we respond to pluralism? Now, for Ratio Christi, the main verse that our entire club is based on is 1 Peter 3:15. It says, "But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect." And Chase did touch on this. The gentleness and respect is something that's very lacking
nowadays. Even if you see like some apologists online, they'll get into these very heated debates, and you'll find that very quickly one of the first things that they lose is gentleness and respect, and that's a big problem that, goes against scripture. And one of the best things you can do when you encounter someone who does believe in pluralism is to ask them first, what do they mean by that? Because, like I said, pluralists can have very personalized ideas of what their spirituality or religion is. So asking them that, you'll actually genuinely figure out their position better and probably learn something new too. And it's really disarming as well. Not that you want to, try to trick them into lowering their guard or anything like that, but actually genuinely get to know what their position is. And then you can ask them, how did you come to that conclusion? Because chances are they've never really thought about that. Usually it goes something like, yeah, I've had that happen. Because usually people will just hear it from like a friend or online or through a movie and forget that that's where they pick their idea up and kind of just never really think about it and have it just in the back of their mind. So just encouraging those conversations is really helpful in just demonstrating the truth and getting to the bottom of their beliefs. And something else you can do is direct others to Jesus, who shows no partiality to those who call upon his name. And you can see in Galatians 3:28, it's one of my favorite verses. There's neither Jew nor Greek, there's neither slave nor free, there's no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. So Jesus is the ultimate pluralist, letting anyone come in. But he is also the ultimate exclusivist. He's the only way. And I think just showing everyone that truth is the best thing that you can do ultimately. Now, final question is there anything that everyone does agree on? The answer to that.
Heck yeah. Amen.
Any questions?
And vanilla's the best.
I just wanted to add on, I think letting like popular culture determine rules and values is a kind of could be a very dangerous trap.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you're basically letting culture decide who you are. And some very nasty characters get involved in directly engineering said culture. And then you could get manipulated into doing some very just objectively, morally quite very bad things. And so that's why you should always think try to come up with your own ideas, definitely. And you should have some principles, right? So that you can come up with your own moral ideas, I guess. You should definitely stick to something.
Yeah, it's very true.
I wanted to say, like, a serious answer to that question is that everyone I've run into, at least, agrees that there's something wrong with the world. There's something wrong with us or nature or something. No matter what you believe, there's something better, like heaven or paradise or nothing.
It's an argument from desire. Was it Lewis who said we all have a God-shaped hole in our hearts? Pascal. Yeah, that's true. Anything else?
So one thing I first of all realize the whole idea of philosophical or religious pluralism is a very modern idea. So like Weber and Berlin came up with these ideas. So they're not ancient ideas, they're new ideas. And I think it was often in response to the contemporary things that were going on in history and realizing the violence and hatred that emerged out of religious conflict. And so I think there was a noble intent of having religious pluralism. Let's just affirm everybody and we just all agree with each other and not offend anybody and just affirm everybody. Doesn't that sound lovely? So I understand some of the heart behind that, and yet the very thing that religious pluralism sought to do, actually the opposite happens. That rather than affirming different religious views, it actually insults them. It dishonors them.
Absolutely.
Because it says, no, it actually says to all religions, you are all wrong. So.
Max.
Just to build on that, I think that's just mostly a human trait, is just not really be accepting of other people. I don't think it's necessarily just, tied just a religious problem. I think that's just any problem. Like if we all were, someone that became atheists one day, there would be different atheist beliefs, and then we'd all start disagreeing with each other and fighting each other and that kind of stuff. So it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because humans are very good at disagreeing with each other. But yeah, and that's the other thing about social pluralism is I think it's a good concept, but it can't be carried out. Like you can't not everyone won't tolerate everyone else. That's just how stuff seems to work. I think that we as Christians are called to, of course, love everyone. That doesn't mean accept everything that someone says or believe everything that someone believes, but it means to love them, and to tolerate up to a certain point what someone else might hold or believe. But yeah, just kind of building off that. Anything else? Alrighty, I think it might be Coach's turn.
Hey friends, thanks for joining us. You thought Grayson's transitions were good. So we've talked about relativism and pluralism. Those are two very prevalent views that you'll hear about in our world today. And the third one that we'd like to talk about today is scientism. And that's perhaps the most prevalent here at Mines, right, at Science and Engineering School. So that's what we'll be discussing next. My name is Coach. You get the day one Rasher Christi exclusive real name reveal right there. I was asked to present. I'm not on Rasher Christi leadership, but mostly I think because Devin was busy getting married. And Julia too, I guess she was busy. Yeah, she was involved in it. Just give it a minute. Yeah, I'll just give it a minute. I was supposed to make this presentation 20 minutes long. Here's my contents. They're not really helpful at all. So, I want to start. This is some of the science I've done, right? We're not here to bash on science, but to talk about the idea of scientism. So I'm going to share some of the stuff I've done. This picture on the left is laser powder bed fusion. It's a 3D printing technique with metal. This is one of the bars that we printed. It's a tensile bar. You pull it apart and see how strong it is. Measure some properties with it. On the bottom, that is a vacuum chamber where we're spraying powder, trying to make it stick to a target. That's my current project that I'm working on. I do computational modeling work for that. Gurple is, when you say green and purple, those are drinks we make at Mines Market. Right, so the point is we're all here to do science at Mines. Not to bash on it, right, but it's something that we all use and abide by. So, I went to there. What is the claim of scientism? Scientism is the belief that science is the only or best way to know the truth about reality. So there's sort of two veins, right? Like with pluralism, as Grayson shared. Strong scientism is that of science is the only way to understand things, right? The only way to gain knowledge. And weak scientism is that it's the preferred way, right? It's the best way. So we're going to mostly focus on strong scientism and why it falls apart. But most people abide by weak scientism because it's a little easier to reconcile with some of the things we'll talk about. However, it still takes away from them in some way, right? So it's important to keep that in mind. As for science, what it is, right? Specifically, we're talking about the scientific method, right? It's a way to gain knowledge. Mostly deals with things that are physical and observable, right? We see things happen. We want to figure out why they happen so we can predict them. So that starts with observation, question, start to look into it a little bit, and then come up with a theory. Why do we think it happens the way it does? Now set up an experiment to test it. That is the essence of science, right? Which scientism uses as its foundation. So, as for now, the shortcomings of scientism. The biggest is that it is self-refuting inherently. The claim of scientism that science is the best way to gain knowledge is actually not scientifically testable. It's a philosophical claim, right? So it falls apart on its own grounds. That is the biggest critique of scientism in general. People who use this as their worldview or as the lens that they view the world through, basically try to extend it beyond reasonable boundaries, right? Science applies well to things that are scientific in nature, but doesn't apply to others. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those things are. Another issue is the presuppositions that it depends on. So here's a list of them. Not all of them, right, but several of the big ones. First of all, it depends on the fact that the world and the universe exists. To put it simply, the fact that there is absolute truth, and that we can know the world and that truth. Things like the laws of logic and math are critical. Also, the existence of natural laws, right, like gravity, for example. Causality as a principle, right? You remember in that flowchart of the scientific method, it's the theory that this thing causes this thing, and now let's test it. And then also just materialism, that there's stuff that exists along the lines of like the universe existing, right? But it's made out of something. So to be clear, these presuppositions aren't flawed inherently. They're relevant to anybody who does science, right? These are the grounds for science. The trouble is that none of these are established scientifically. In the same way that the claim of scientism is self-refuting, these also can't be established scientifically. So now a third way that scientism is flawed is it can only explain how things happen, but not why. This was the project at the end of my junior year that I did during finals week because I was bored. I found these halogen desk lamps in Brown Building and said, I want to cook eggs on those. Now science can explain all the heat transfer concepts, right? I had to fabricate an aluminum plate so that it would get hotter. I had to build this little tent to trap some of the heat in. Science can also explain the chemical reaction taking place in the egg turning white and actually cooking. But it's really insufficient to explain why the heck I did that. It took about 45 minutes to cook this egg sunny side up. So I spent a while that day. I bought a dozen eggs because it was cheaper than the organic half dozen, and nobody else wanted to eat any, so I had a lot of eggs that day. So another shortcoming of scientism is that, right, it focuses on the things that are physical and observable. So now, what about the things that aren't? These are very critical topics to everyday life. Philosophy, morality, logic, love, justice, consciousness, and I threw in history, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the next slide. But these are all things which also can't be scientifically tested. Devin, pop quiz. Do you love your wife?
Yes.
Can we prove that with science?
Probably not.
I don't think so. But I'm glad. So that's another shortcoming, right? It's on its own, it can't explain these things. another truth is that there are several sciences which don't operate in the same way. So these are some of those. And the key to all of these is that they operate on things which took place in the past, right? So astronomy, specifically looking at like the Big Bang Theory, things that, like how old is our universe, things that took place in the past, anthropology and archaeology and paleontology, geology, and I also threw in forensics because that's what Donald did for his career. He did forensic toxicology. And so the thing about these is that they don't operate in a very rigid scientific way, in that they're not readily repeatable, right? Like nobody can redo the Big Bang or observable from the start, right? In general, when you start a scientific experiment, you'd like to cause something at the start and watch it to the end, right? Maybe you have sensors, maybe you have all kinds of equipment to see what's going on in the meantime. But these are sciences which still operate under the scientific method, but they don't operate in that very rigid way. So Donald, did you want to share a little bit about like what did forensics look like and how did you guys operate?
Well, forensics basically says what we're doing is for the courts. We're going to the court. So what I worked on was DUI cases back in Georgia, and so if an officer sees somebody weaving down the road, they follow them and pull them over. They get them out and do field sobriety tests on them, and if they are convinced that they're impaired, then they take them to the hospital and draw a blood sample. So then they send that sample to the lab. That's where I come in. So that is a historical sample. So that tube of blood I have is what this driver was, the amount of drugs or alcohol or whatever in his sample is represented in that, in his blood is represented in that one sample. Okay, so it's a historical sample. And you can't repeat that, just like the Big Bang. That was a one-time event. And same with this sample. So, and then it's being prepared, or the results are being prepared for court. So it's different. We do use chemistry, so that would be the consistent thing with the other applications. But it's that uniqueness of that historical sample, basically.
Right, and the uniqueness of that science and these other sciences, like the reasoning method has to change, right? Rather than saying, here's what I've observed and I have a hypothesis and I'm going to test that hypothesis. It's actually, you take the evidence and you look at the evidence and then think of many hypotheses and try to figure out which one fits best, right? So you actually work backwards.
So you might say, well, does he have a prescription for those drugs? There would be an event, or was there somebody or something else going on with the car to come up with your interpretation of the results?
Certainly. So with all those in mind, these are some of the critical problems, right? Some of the critical issues that we have to consider as people, but scientism is insufficient to explain for the reasons we've discussed. The origin of the universe, right? Like, again, we can sort of start to describe how there was a Big Bang, maybe, but certainly not why, again. So the origin of the fundamental laws of nature, a lot of secular scientists, atheists, will say, well, in the beginning there wasn't really nothing, there was a set of laws that governed how all these things took place. Where did they come from, right? They can't explain that. Fine-tuning of the universe, that's also challenging, right? Like the fact that certain constants, like gravity is a good example, are the way they are is mathematically impossible. And so how did they start off the right way to begin with? And then some of those intangible things, right? Consciousness and morality too. And so now the thrust of our argument is that Christianity can explain these things, right? So in summary of the Christian worldview, you have the truth that God spoke everything into existence, right? That's how it was caused. And by knowing God, we can know absolute objective truth. It's revealed to us through God's word, that's the Bible, and also just through creation, and sometimes through God's revelation to people in other means. There's a moral law that God has established. We know that also from that revelation in the Bible. And this is probably the most important point that I'll make tonight, is that science is not at odds with Christianity, right? But that it's one more way that we can understand God and understand His creation, the world, and the universe. Science is just one lens for viewing the world. There are many lenses for viewing the world, right? And those are relevant in their respective spheres, right? So if you're talking about philosophy, use a philosophical lens, right? Don't use science to try to explain philosophy or try to explain morality. That's where scientism falls apart, right? But in the Christian worldview, we can operate under all of those in the respective way. And then this Bible verse was also in Grayson's presentation, and it's good. I want to emphasize, that Jesus is the truth this time, right, rather than the way or the life. So that's the summary of scientism and why we think it falls apart and why we think Christianity is a better alternative to view the universe. So let's do questions, and then I have one more thing to wrap up with. Yeah, back
How
there.
would scientists explain, the fact that because of dark energy, our universe is not only expanding, but is expanding at an increasing rate? How would they explain that?
How would they explain why the universe is expanding?
Yeah, at an increasing rate.
I'm not sure I know the answer to that.
Who's asking this? No, from what perspective are you? I kind of missed the first part of your question.
Okay. Well, I mean, how would someone who believes in scientism, explain the fact that our universe is,
Well, so realize both dark matter and dark energy are one of the biggest mysteries of science, and no one is all over that. They just say, these are things for us to figure out, and give us enough time, and we'll figure out, where these things come from and what they are. So they kind of defer. They look at, the history of science, say, look at all the things we have figured out in science, and give us enough time, and we'll figure that out. Now, the point though is that, this accelerated rate of expansion is the death knell to a persistent universe. But we're not in an oscillating universe, right? So it signals the beginning of a universe, which no one's going to be really quick to argue. I don't know if that helps or not, but they're not opposed.
because it kind of goes against some established scientific facts that that there's a set amount of energy in the world and transfers and stuff like that. That's the point. There's only a certain amount of energy, right? But with the universe expanding, not only is there a set amount of energy driving that, but there's an increasing amount of energy. Where is that coming from?
Well, but it's a constant. So how do we get acceleration? It's by applying the constant force. So you don't have to increase energy to accelerate something. You just have to apply constant force, right? That's just physics.
Just to play devil's advocate for a second, I mean, then it's not contradictory or anything at all because the scientific method includes a way to update based on new evidence. And they wouldn't necessarily claim that their knowledge of these things is complete. They simply claim that that there is an explanation out there. We may just not have reached it. That's just the base claim of science is that we can figure this out through science. They don't necessarily have to have the explanation right here and now. It's fine that it contradicts previous science that they've done because the scientific method allows for you to update theories based on new evidence.
Over here.
Forgive me if I'm not quite in the question. I was curious how this would hang tied with weak scientism. You did touch on that for a minute. And what was it? That they believe that it's the best way to? So
Yeah.
is that more of an all roads lead to Rome type of thing? What would they defer to?
I think that's a typical worldview because you can of either like a secular and naturalistic worldview, but then kind of dodge a few of the resistances that are posed here. So in those instances where like philosophy or morality is a better explanation, they'd have to defer to those methods of reasoning, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that their worldview has a reasonable explanation for those things. So they can still sort of fall apart, right? There's some things where like science is not the best explanation. Several, right? Like we mentioned a couple. So it still doesn't really work for the same reasons, but it's not quite as severe because you can defer to the other reasons.
And it would defer to like philosophy and the non-hard, we'll call it sciences.
Yeah, I guess depending on the situation at hand, yeah.
For a lot of materials would try to reduce those things to material that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you, especially if you come to like reductivism, they believe that like all like, for instance, brain, like anything you think, like thoughts and stuff, can't just be reduced to brain states.
Right.
So like these things of like thoughts and then beliefs, like things like color, and even like morality is all reducible to the physical on that view.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So for example, in the why did I cook eggs in brown building on the desk lamps?
Yeah, that's
science could boil that down to was the chemicals in my brain caused me to do that.
Yeah, that's
right.
It's just
and then we get to a sort of different point of like what is a more reasonable explanation, like that they did that or that in my own will I elected to do that.
Yeah, they'll say that the will is still going to reduce to some sort of physical thing happening in the brain.
And I think a more reasonable explanation for the human will is an immaterial thing, right? That it's actually apart from material. I think that's more reasonable. So that's where you just kind of
you'd have to like show that to them. Obviously, they're gonna just you have to show it to them. I mean, in their view, they would see themselves as consistent there because it's like they can reduce it. I mean, you believe it's this, they believe it's that. You have to actually show that though, that your will is non-physical.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and so some people have done studies that attempt to prove that, but yeah, that's a really good one to consider. Grayson.
I guess kind of on that, but also a slightly different point is like that belief that you can, or science will eventually come up with an answer and explanation for everything, like the will, or the expansion of the universe, or dark matter, dark energy, or every question that science will eventually be able to explain it. That's faith. Like that's the definition of faith, that you believe that science will explain it. You just hold that belief, it's based on, science explaining things in the past, you believe it will explain things in the future, which, fair enough, but it's still faith.
Well, actually, most philosophers of science would contend with that, because actually science has a bad track record of figuring out the way the world is. And in all probability, everything we believe right now is probably wrong. So a lot of philosophers of science are actually very pessimistic about science and its capability of explaining the world. Science as just pure naturalistic science. Okay, so it's problematic.
It is problematic. Another cool point to note related to this point that science is not at odds with Christianity is just the historical scientific revolution in the Western world was pretty much totally sparked by Christian believers or else theists, because it was a way to understand who God is and His creation. And then one last point was come back to Retro Christi in the future, where we can discuss some of these things, right? I think my favorite is when we talk about the origin of the universe. We talk about the cosmological argument for the existence of God. The moral argument is a really important one too. Those are some of the topics that we'll discuss in the future. I don't know what the schedule looks like this semester, but Grayson or Devin, I don't know, whoever will be announcing, each day what the topic will be. Donald also has his email list, so you'll know before you come. And then to end off, here are some links, some QR codes. I just want to encourage those who are new to Minds or just new to this group to get plugged in to your faith. Here at Minds, there's a bunch of different Christian ministries. So there's on the left the group me for this group, Ratio Christi. You should join it. In the middle is a group me for the fellowship chat. This is just a group of Christians who from time to time will do different activities, or maybe that somebody will say, I've got free stuff if anybody wants it, right? That's just to help build the community here. And then on the right is a document that has a list of the different Christian ministries on campus, and yeah, a description of them and when they meet and everything. So that's useful for you who all are trying to get plugged into stuff. You can refer to me with questions on that. But otherwise, I think we're all done here.
Alrighty, I got sent a handy dandy list of items to mention while we're closing out. So, right, we mentioned that retreat. We'll send you all some more information, probably talk about it when we finalize what we're going to be doing. Like we said, it's going to be nearby, just in West Golden, but in the mountains where it's still nice, and it's going to be October 20th and 21st. Again, just to remind y'all, the email list that Donald has, don't forget, if you want to get our weekly emails where we just say what the talk is, again, promise you, we don't spam, only collect your personal information. I'm kidding, we don't do that. We also have a YouTube channel where we post all of our discussions. So in case you wanted to see some of the past topics that we covered, then go ahead and just search Minds Ratio Christi. I think we'll actually start attaching like a link to the YouTube channel in our weekly emails, just so if you miss it, you can click on the link and watch the video. Beyond that, for those who stopped by at the whiteboard today, I just want to say thank you for stopping by. We like having those conversations and giving out candy, and we'll have more candy in the future. Speaking of that, in 2 weeks, we won't be meeting next week because it's Labor Day, but in 2 weeks we will have the fan favorite, Dr. Doima, coming back. Now, for you freshmen who don't know who Dr. Doima is, come back in 2 weeks, because you're going to want to find out who Dr. Doima is. He's a philosophy professor at Colorado Christian, and is awesome. He'll be doing a talk over the discipleship of the mind, which I think means how to think about stuff. Like having an open mind maybe, but not letting your brains fall out. Like I said. Let's see, is there anything else? Yes, in 2 weeks we'll also be whiteboarding with the question, do you need evidence for your beliefs? So, stop by on that one. We're gonna get into a lot of fun conversations. And also, we'll send out a poll in case you want to join us for whiteboarding. Let's see, I think that's it. So, oh, yes, you may speak.
I'm the guy that kind of organizes this, what we do. And the reason we did this tonight was especially for freshmen. How many freshmen are here? All right, cool. Like it so far? Is that this is a STEM school, and these 3 topics are just something that you will be hit by if you are out sharing Jesus with somebody. And that's what we like to teach, how to do that. Apologetics means defense of the faith, 1 Peter 3:15, and many other verses in Jude 3. We earnestly contend for the faith. So we're to present the faith with gentleness and respect through historical, philosophical, scientific arguments. Arguments in a good way, not beat them up. And so that's what we wanted to bring up, these 3 points, especially here. And whenever you're dialoguing with somebody, somehow it's going to come up, especially relativism. And you talked about Daryl Doima, talking about discipleship of the mind. Some other topics we have Dr. Hess from Denver Seminary. He'll be talking about, this is what I asked him to talk about. Does the Old Testament teach an ex nihilo creation account? Because, like Mormons, any Mormons here? You're welcome if you are. But they don't believe in an ex nihilo, creation account. They think that God is part of the universe who was, and it's an eternal universe, basically. And then our own Carl, who taught biology for 39 years, I think, and is still
doing it.
Still doing it, man. Go get her. He's going to talk about the Scopes trial. How many have heard about the Scopes trial? Okay. Answer like this. Anyway, it's what, the 150th year?
100th year.
100th
year anniversary this year.
Yeah, and so not a whole lot of people know about it, and that's why I think we need to talk about it, learn about it. So that'll be on September 29th. Then on the following week, we have a pro-life presentation. There's a group called Justice for All. They have excellent material, and we like to promote that. And then a new guy for us, David Spiegel, he teaches philosophy at
Community College.
College, ACC. Yeah, has taught for 20-something years. He's a great guy. And then we have the fall break. And then Dr. Doima, with his son, Jared, has a new argument for the existence of God.
So excited for that one.
He calls it the ideological argument.
Music, I think.
Yeah.
Somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
It sounds
Pretty cool.
interesting. Definitely come for that one.
They even submitted a paper to the ETS and PS, Evangelical Theological Society, Evangelical Philosophical Society, and it was accepted. So they're going to practice on us. Then Dr. Hess again on how important are the laws of Leviticus for the Christian. So why did they have these laws back in the Testament? How do we deal with that? As you can tell, we're not doing one definite thing. We're bouncing around because that's life. You meet these people out there and they got some other idea. And then we have a Dr. Bill Hansberger. He's going to be here twice, and he's going to be talking one time about deconstruction. What does that mean? It's about deconstructing some people who may be brought up Christian, and they start deconstructing. They work through it, throw out this part, throw out that part. That's a rough definition of it. But he's going to talk about that and how that's important so that we maintain our faith and see the insides of that. And then we'll have him again, and then for Christmas we have Ratio Christmas. So you got to come see that. That'll end out the semester. But that's what we'll be doing. And what we do here is we like to train people. That's why we had these guys. They've been working on this stuff for a while, and that's what we do. So it's a great opportunity for you not only to learn your engineering, your 4 years here, but to get some good theology based on the Bible.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll be meeting 2 weeks. With that, I think I'll pray us out, and then you can be free to go or linger around and talk or eat food. Eat food, yes. We have a lot of cookies over here, so take 2 or 3 or whatever. But yeah, all right, I'll pray us out. Dear God, just thank you for letting us all be able to come together again for another year at Minds, and I pray that you just bless each of our year. I'm just learning more about the world that you made and growing more knowledge about engineering, but also I pray that we each are able to answer some of the questions that we've had and all have had about you and our faith, and that we'll be able to just dive into that, and that you'll provide the answers that we need, and that we can just see you work on campus, and that you'll be in each one of our lives as we go forward this year. In your holy name I pray. Amen. Thanks for coming, y'all. Cool.
Hang on, let me
Not highlight
Good luck with that. Yeah, I'm teaching my class. So in addition to being with us, I'm teaching